What role does slavery play in the ratification debate?
Well, the South, many of the Anti-Federalists in the South particularly, were very concerned that the Constitution did not address slavery clearly enough and did not protect the institution of slavery for them. So you have these debates in North Carolina and South Carolina where they talked about, well, slavery is not even mentioned in the Constitution and they want to abolish the slave trade. And so they disagreed with that, but then ultimately because they didn't take a very radical approach in writing the Constitution and completely eliminating slavery, that's how they agreed to ratify the Constitution.
I think if you look to the Constitutional Convention in which they have the Slave Trade Compromise, the Three-Fifths Compromise, and the Fugitive Slave Clause, these were men who were giving the South some of the things that they knew that were going to be necessary to achieve ratification. If they hadn't made these three concessions, I don't think that the ratification debates would have been as successful in the southern states like Georgia that had unanimous ratification. But with these concessions, these were compromises that allowed the nation to come together as within a union of 13 states.
Did I understand you correctly in your opening to say that the supermajority required in the Senate can be traced to process established by the Constitution?
We said that the supermajority rule required by Article 7 for ratification, it can kind of be reflected in the role of the filibuster today, where you have the opposing party implementing the filibuster, requiring the supermajority vote to end the filibuster.
Is there any evidence that, in fact, there is a relationship that it was adopted with reference to that or based on that, or is that just a conjecture on your part?
Well, I mean, you can see that they adopted this 9 states, this supermajority, so that it would possibly ensure that the contiguous states would ratify, or that a majority of people, a large state would ratify. And this can also be seen, I mean, although it is a more of a conjecture, it's not rooted in specific evidence. You can see that it does relate somewhat to the filibuster, because if it's required for a supermajority to talk about legislation or to pass legislation that ensures that most people would agree with it, that majority leaders would agree with it, and that many people would.
You can trace the supermajority vote throughout American history. Under the Articles, 9 out of 13 states were required to give consent if a new state were to enter the Union or if they were to enter the war. 13 states, the unanimous ratification would have been required for any amendments, which is what made this new Constitution necessary. However, when we implement this new Constitution, we set a benchmark of 9 out of 13 states for ratification. We then set other benchmarks, such as 2/3 Senate consent for treaties and such. So when you see like more controversial issues in the implementation of the filibuster within the Senate, you do see this higher level of benchmark set to prevent majority tyranny.
What was so significant about the small states in the ratification convention making their decisions so quickly?
Well, I believe that, like you have in the state of Rhode Island, who was the last state to ratify, and they're kind of the stubborn scapegoat of the 13 states. And they actually kind of ironically at the end, they said, well, I guess if everyone else ratified the Constitution, we will as well. And they proposed the same amendments or Declaration of Rights that the other states proposed at the end of their convention. So they kind of copied everyone else. And that was the significance of that smaller state.
You needed the...
Thank you. This is very good, and the true test will be the noted constitutional scholar John Kaminsky comes up. But for my money, your knowledge of the ratification process, the specifics among the different states, was so far the best I've heard, and really pretty impressive. Someone's been doing some well, we know where you're getting it from, but it showed. It was good. It was good. I mean, it really. I think it's impressive. I think that's what this question genuinely required you to do, and it's apparent to me you did it. I was impressed when I saw you over the weekend. I'm more impressed. You're a lot of fun to have this conversation with, and really an impressive display of learning. I really mean that.
Well, one of the things that I witnessed was your eye contact with each of us. You have a lot of energy, you have great passion for the subject, and something that did impress me throughout your opening statement as well as your responses to the follow-up question were your continuous references to very specific comments that were made by the delegates or taking excerpts from specific Federalist papers. And I thought that was extremely well done.
I like your reference to authorities. I think you did a very good job there. You got an 11 from me on that one. You really did a very good job in balancing philosophical concerns and political concerns. When William Pierce of Georgia described James Madison from the activities in the Constitutional Convention, he said he was a scholar and a profound politician. And Federalists were that. And it was that political knowledge that greatly assisted them in getting the Constitution adopted. And so I very much appreciated that side. You sort of glanced over Massachusetts, saying it was one of the easy states. It was a tough state. And in fact, they realized after 3 weeks of debating, they had failed, the Federalists did. And they had to go with the recommended amendments. You know all about that. And so you can see they had to diverge to a completely different form of ratifying because those 400 delegates almost were mainly anti-Federalists. So they used that method, which becomes the method in all the other states except for Maryland, and that's how we get ratification. Again, politics in the Confederation Congress. They wanted bandwagon. And there were only 4 or 5 anti-Federalists. They could have pushed it through. I like the fact that you used Rich Henry Lee in there. He proposes a Bill of Rights. But the compromise is, let's get rid of opposition. They're meeting in secret so no one knows there's opposition. And we'll send it out without approbation, which they could have done very easily, send it with approbation. Washington commented when he was told what happened by James Madison, better to get the presumed unanimity, because the resolution was worded, the Congress unanimously sends this to the states, gives the presumption, the impression that it was unanimous in favor of the Constitution. It wasn't. Washington said, not everybody can peep behind the curtain and to see what really happened. Let me see. New Hampshire, very good on New Hampshire, how they meet in February, and they don't have the votes, and so they delay. Again, an example of great politics. Slavery, you could have expanded upon that, but you did, what you said on it was correct, and it becomes a very important issue, particularly the fugitive slave clause in Massachusetts, where slavery had been prohibited by judicial decree. And also the 3/5 clause is important throughout the country. Let me see, I think, the supermajority. I think it was very, very insightful to bring the Senate's position right now in line with the supermajority. It was obviously a rule that the Senate made, but what you gave us here, which really I haven't seen commented very much at all, in all of the opposition to the filibustering going on, they don't comment on this precedent of supermajorities over and over and over again. And so that was fantastic that you were able to bring that out and not only bring it out, but then when challenged, when you could have been flustered very easily, you came out very authoritatively and gave proof to your statement. So I think you did a terrific job, and you and your teachers deserve a real round of applause.